Some things I feel I should speak on. Some things I feel like it's important for people to know about themselves. And, I like to start off by saying I hope you have the attention span to stick with me because in today's society, it's very hard for people to listen to someone about some truth or about some action. We just want that stimulus about entertainment and somebody's lifestyle and their money, their cars, clothes, music, whatever the case may be, because we feel so close and connected, attached to this culture that we live in today. So one thing I want to talk about today, and this is from my experience, this is what helped me a lot to build my confidence, to build my self-esteem a lot, is loving yourself and accepting yourself. I want to touch on those two things because I feel like it's very, very important. This feels good that I'm doing like a little motion right there. But anyway, I just want to talk about that because it is important to talk about those things. So many people today actually do not like who they are. They are not comfortable in their skin. They don't appreciate the flaws about them, and they feel like they should be perfect, and that's just not the truth. One thing that I have is like an affirmation or just a motto is, you got to perfect your imperfections. And what that means is that those imperfections that you do have about yourself, you got to try to perfect them, knowing that you're never going to perfect them. Perfecting them, though, practicing perfection of imperfection is going to always climb. It's always going to keep getting better and better for you. So if I have a bad habit of doing something, my thing is that I'm going to perfect my imperfection. So I'm going to try to perfect that, knowing that it's never going to be perfect. But because I'm putting in that effort of trying to be perfect all the time, it's going to consistently get better. Does that make sense for people? So that's what I wanted to say about that. But the whole goal here is to get you to see the importance of loving who you are as a human being, physically, everything, because it has a lot to do with your self-esteem. And if your self-esteem isn't right, if your self-esteem isn't there, there's going to be problems with yourself. You're not going to appreciate who you are as a person, right? So before I go deep, I do want to just give a little background on how my journey to love myself began. It really began as a child. Around 25, though, is when I realized that I need to just start loving myself a little more, because at the end of the day, from this moment now, this present moment that I'm making this video to the moment that I leave this earth, I'm going to remain the same. I'm going to be the skin color, look with the facial features, body, everything. Everything's going to be the same with me. So am I actually going to spend this time now in this moment to the time that I leave conflicting with myself about why do I not look this way? Why am I not this height? Not loving myself, not liking who I am, not being comfortable in my skin. Am I actually going to be that way towards myself? And for me, it was a no. I've dealt with some things internally that took time to get over, to took time to accept, took time to love about who I was, for me to feel, for actually fulfill that of loving myself completely. It took time. It really took time. But first, I had to identify with who I was, with those conversations internally with myself, what I didn't like about myself. I had to identify what it was. And identifying something is also important. If you don't know what the problem is, if you don't know what you're identifying with, how are you actually going to deal with it? How are you actually going to have any kind of solutions to deal with that? You're not, because you can't identify with what's going on inside of you. It could be pride or ego taking over and not allowing you to actually see that with yourself. It could be one of those things. For some people it is, and that actually keeps them from actually growing and expanding into who they truly fully are. So for me, it started when I was a kid. I didn't get a lot of love as a kid. I had come from a bad place. Come from a very bad place where we struggled a lot, where pain and struggle were the main two things. We struggled a lot. It was very hard to get food, very hard to get housing. It was very hard for those things in my life as a child. I really didn't have a childhood because I spent so much time going from one place to the next place to the next place. And it was all very, very just tough for me to really settle in to my inner self at that time. Even though it was very easy for me to adapt to certain places, it was hard for me to really tune in to who I was or who I was becoming, because I was moving so fast, and were all those moving so fast were like traumatic, because you get to one spot and then you think you're gonna be there, then boom, you move to the next spot. And for a kid, that's like, what the fuck? Like, how am I supposed to cope with that? Let alone no one's communicating to me about that, about what just happened. It just happened. So I went through a lot of that. I went through a lot of homelessness. I went through a lot of struggle. I went through a lot of um, separation with the family. I went through a lot of hotels. For my family, it was very hard for us to seek shelter. I went through foster care, shelters, things like that. It was very, very tough as a kid for me to actually find my grounds. And because of that, it did a lot to who I was as a person. But thankfully, I transmuted that energy into just becoming a strong person. But that's my journey, right? Like, that's me not actually being loved, right? The proper way as a kid, having that childhood, having those parents there who were there for you to guide you, mother's love, father's guidance. I didn't have that. So I was looking for it, but I didn't get it. I was giving it, but I wasn't receiving it. And as I got older, I was giving it even more because I never wanted to see people in those places. I never wanted to see people not feeling loved because I wasn't loved, or at least I didn't feel like I was being loved. So everywhere I went, every person I met, I would always give them love. I would always show them genuine love because of the place I've been. I just came from war. And, as a kid, and that matured me a lot. It actually got me to this strong spot with myself, who I was. And as I met people, I never wanted them to feel that way. I never wanted people to be in that position. So I always gave love to people. I always showed love to people, and I always made sure they knew I was always going to give them some love. I was always going to show them some love because I was in love, because I didn't get that love, right? So that's my journey, right? And as I got older and older, I continued to do that. I continued to be that way. I continued to be who I was. And it put me in a position of, being very, very open, because when you just show love, show love, show love, people actually start to manipulate that. People actually start to take advantage of that, and people don't return that love as well. It could be with your family, it could be with your friends, it could be with the associates that you're working with. And for me, I didn't really see that because that's all I wanted to do. I always gave back to people, I always showed love. And I didn't really care about all the other stuff until I kept continuing to get older and continue to experience what it was like to just give love and not really receive it back the way you would give it out, you know. But that's about my reason for being that way, was because of my childhood, my root, my origin point, the way I wasn't being loved. And I always wanted to give that love to people that I never received, because I didn't want them to not have to feel that way that I felt when I was a kid. And I also didn't want to see people in the positions I was in as a kid. I didn't want to see people there. I never wanted to go back to those positions, right? So that's my journey. That's a short version of my journey of not being loved, not receiving love as a kid, getting older and giving that love back to people, and getting even older and understanding that the love that you're giving, you're not receiving, is being manipulated, you're being taken advantage of, people are looking at you some type of way, people think you're soft, all this stuff, but they didn't understand my reasoning for it. They didn't understand my journey, my story, and here's some of my story. I'm in the process of making a book that's actually going to have a lot more details and a lot more content on that. But that's just something that I want you to understand on how I got to love myself at the end of the day, So it came through me being rejected, right? It came through me not being accepted by others. It came through me just realizing that you have to love yourself, bro. People are going to talk about you. People are going to say they don't like this about you. You should be looking this way. You should look this. You should walk this. You should talk this way. You should be this way. People are going to say all that. And the person you are, you think that was okay with people, but really it wasn't, because subliminally, it could be directly that they're going to tell you that they didn't like it, or that they don't like it, and you should change that about yourself, and that they don't like it. And those are just your flaws. You're not perfect. We're not perfect beings. So that makes people feel some type of way. Just like when people say, I don't like the way you talk. And for someone who does not love themselves, they're going to actually accept that. They are going to accept that. They're not going to be like, what? I don't care what you think. I don't care what you say. I love myself. This is who I am. I'm not going to change that for you. That's someone who loves themselves. That's someone who's comfortable in their skin. But someone who's not like that, someone who does not love themselves, they're going to accept that from the person, right? Especially if it's somebody that they thought they loved and that they've been showing love to. If someone tells them that they like, that they, not even like I love you, like you, I'm trying to get with you, but just liked as a person, you my friend, you my homie, whatever. If somebody tell them, I don't like the way you talk, they going to feel that. That's going to affect their self-esteem. That's going to affect who they are, and they're going to feel some type of way. That's going to lower their vibration. That's going to lower them as people. Excuse me, I'm going to readjust myself here. That's going to lower them as a person, as a people, They're not going to feel too good about that. They're going to start to reject themselves because of that. Maybe not in the moment. Maybe they laugh. Oh, why don't you like the way I talk? And maybe you go on to tell them and start making fun of that person because of the way they talk. Little do you know, behind closed doors, that person is crying about that. They hurt behind that, And I'm on 11, 12 minutes, so I got like 3 more minutes left, right? So that person's hurt behind that, right? They're hurt. Their self-esteem has lowered. Their confidence lowered because of what you told them. And if that person had loved themselves, they would have checked your ass and said, I don't give a fuck about what you think about me. That's your motherfucking opinion. I love myself. Obviously you don't, because what you're doing right now is you're putting out what you got inside of you, which is trying to tear someone down. Right? That's what that is. So I'm letting you know the difference between someone who loves themselves and someone who doesn't, and the importance of loving and accepting yourself first. You shouldn't be looking for acceptance outside of you. You shouldn't be looking for someone to love you outside of you. This is why we see a lot of these problems in relationships, because people don't love themselves. They can't accept who they are. They have to go out there and have someone else accept who they are before they do. And that's the problem, because you're putting the power in someone else's hands. So let me finish up by saying this. My journey, I told you a little bit about my journey, how, I went through my journey. At 25, I realized I need to accept myself. And that's when I really did that, because I was thinking, like, in this current moment right now, the way I'm feeling, the way I look, to the day I leave, I'm going to look the same. This is how I am. My height, my features, everything. That's not going to change unless I pay a surgeon to do it, but I'm not going to do that, Why would I conflict internally about that with myself for the rest of my days here? I'm not going to do that. So I worked on that. I actually started to improve my confidence. I started to improve who I was as a person. I started getting more comfortable in my own skin. And it came to a point where no one could fuck with me as far as telling me who the fuck I was and what they didn't like. And, oh, you look like this and you don't have these features to you. And ha. I don't give a fuck about none of that. All that's telling me is that you have some kind of hurt inside yourself. You haven't actually sat down with yourself. You haven't actually looked in the mirror yourself and loved who you really are. So you got to do what you have inside of you and put that shit out, because you're trying to tear someone down. But guess what? You can't tear a person who loves themselves down. You cannot. You can't tear someone who accepts themselves down. They are comfortable in their skin. They love who they are. And that's who I am. And that's why I'm trying to get people to understand that that's important. Because in today's society, it's taught people to hate themselves, to not like this about you, to not like the way you think, to not like the way you walk, to not like the way you talk, to not like the way you look. Especially as black people. We have not been taught to love ourselves as black people. The way we look, we have not been taught to love the way we look. And I'm coming up on 15 minutes, so I'm going to have to end it there. I'm going to come back with another one. Peace out.